Hey, what's up? My name's J.M. Chaley and welcome to my channel. This week I want to talk about flashbacks, putting flashbacks in fantasy fiction and how they can make or break your series. Sometimes if they're handled well, they can enrich a story and provide some really cool background and backstory that the reader just wants to know more. Like, show me more of what happened back then before all the stuff over here. Show me what happened over here. If it's handled correctly, it could be very much that and very engaging. If handled poorly, your reader's going to be like, stop showing me this stuff in the past. I want to see what's happening now. I don't care about this, right? We've all been there. We've seen the good, we've seen the bad, and the ugly. I guess you got to throw in that too, right? So let's get into it. The first thing that I think, and this was my number one pet peeve with flashbacks, and it was the reason I made the video, because this was like definitely when I say make or break, this is a break, right? This is a bad example of a flashback done poorly, right? So you have your main characters. They're the characters that maybe are on the cover of the book. They're the characters talked about in the blurb in the back of the book. They're the reason you buy the book. I'm going to read about these folks right here. And then you go into the flashback, you're reading along, and then you get hit with a flashback. And suddenly there's new characters. These are different characters. You don't know who these people are. This is in the past. Or maybe you don't even know it's the past. It's just, you're just thrown into this other place. And you're like, what's going on? Right? Like the text isn't in italics or anything like that. You're not being shown anything. You have no idea what's going on. And they're doing something that has nothing to do with the main characters in present day. And you're like, what's happening right now? I'm getting a completely different story about something that has nothing to do with this book out of nowhere. And then whoop, they bring you back to the main story. And you're like, okay, I don't know what that was. And then suddenly, whoop, you're over here again, right? And you're dealing with this confusing nonsense. So I read a book like this. It was actually a Star Wars book, and I was confused by it. I'm like, what's going on? Who are these people? I had no idea it took place in the past until both of these timelines kind of like merged, when you realized, oh, the main characters from present day are now finding the thing that these folks did in the past. These were flashbacks all along. Well, it was a real frustrating ride to get there. And if they had carved out all that stuff and I didn't know that backstory, the main characters would have got there anyway. I would have been like, oh, they found this thing. Okay. And then kept reading, and it didn't add to the story. And all it did was frustrate me and take me out of the moment and the immersion of the characters that I cared about. And then I had a hard time because they kept oscillating back and forth, where I'm like, where did we leave off with these guys? And who are these guys again? And what were they doing? It was a mess. It was so jarring. It would be a lot easier if you were flashing back with characters you already knew, and starting your chapter with like 5 years ago, or something like that, where you're like, okay, I get this. That would be a more vanilla flashback maybe, but at least it would make sense, and I wouldn't be kind of confused, jarred, and frustrated. The other thing you got to watch out for, I think, in flashbacks is pacing. So a lot of times you'll want to end a chapter on, a page turner. Maybe it's a cliffhanger, or maybe it's just a question or a conundrum or something that is going to make the reader want to find out what happens next, right? Well, you do that, you set up that hook, and then bam, you hit them with the flashback. Now this could work really well and keep that suspense going while they're like, oh, what's going to happen? Oh no, we're not going to find out yet until later. But man, that flashback better be real good. Or else your reader is going to be like, you interrupted the story I cared about for this? You could end up pissing off your reader, and that's not good. So if you play that game, the kind of bait and switch, your pacing has to be strong. It has to be good. It's got to be a good, solid flashback. Deliver something good. A payoff would be nice. But especially if you have multiple flashbacks where you're constantly going back and forth, your pacing is going to be very, very important. You know. And it would be very challenging, I would think, to leave each one off with a cliffhanger. You know, cliffhanger here, then flashback, and then cliffhanger here, and then back to present. You know, that's a way you could do it, and that could pay off very nicely for you. Or it could backfire if your readers don't care about one story versus the other. Maybe they care more about what's going on in the past. Can you imagine that? That's actually, I'm getting to that one. That's coming. The third one I would say is too much time between flashbacks. You have multiple flashbacks that you want to show us, but not enough content where you can jump back and forth through the length of the entire novel. You only want to show a couple of flashbacks, maybe 2 or 3, whatever, through the length of the entire novel. Where you run into a problem here is your reader may forget what was going on. So if you have them read like 9-10 chapters and then hit them with a flashback and then have them go back to the future, back to the present, and hit them with 9-10 chapters again, and then a flashback again, they may forget where you left off with the other flashback. If the two are connected, maybe it's a different flashback at a different time and it has nothing to do with one another. That would be a good way to mitigate that problem. You know, you don't need to remember precisely everything that happened in that first flashback, because we showed you what was going on in the 1920s over here. Now we're showing you what's going on in the 1970s over here. Doesn't matter, right? They may not be connected. We're just showing you something else. But if these two things happen like right after the other, right? This was a Thursday in March 2005, right? And this is a Friday on March 2005, right? Then maybe it matters if you forget or not. This whole thing gets exasperated if these aren't even the main characters in the flashbacks. So now you have that working against you too. Separated by 10 different chapters. These two flashbacks take place one after the other, chronologically. Your reader may forget what happened in the last flashback, and they're not even characters that they may care about or are connected to what the present day characters are doing. So it's just all this stuff creating confusion and frustration with the reader, and it could work against you. Number 4 is what I would like to call the Godfather 2 problem. Now, The Godfather, very famous movie, of course. The Godfather 2, the sequel, was almost a movie in 2 parts. It was almost 2 movies unto itself. So you had Michael Corleone, who was the Godfather in present day. This was taking place, I want to say, during like the 1950s or something. And then you had these frequent flashbacks of his father, Vito Corleone, in what, the 1920s or 1910s or whatever it was. And here's the thing. You didn't need the flashbacks. Now I say that almost biting my tongue because that Robert De Niro stuff was so good. But if you're looking at the entire movie, you don't... The stuff that's happening in the present has nothing to do with Vito Corleone's rise to power. It shows maybe the legacy, but it's not necessary. Michael Corleone is kind of off doing his own thing. There's this whole plot line with him getting involved in Cuba and all this. It has nothing to do in the stuff with Fredo, right? It has nothing to do with the stuff in the past. Now, maybe there's some theme or link that I'm missing that's very, very subtle, but the hard story the A story, what Lisa Cron would call A story in Story Genius, like the main storyline, they're not connected. They're not the same rail. And you could actually cut out all of the flashback and condense Godfather 2 in just the Michael Corleone plot, and you wouldn't lose anything, story-wise. All the stuff that Michael Corleone does makes sense. You don't lose any information by missing out on the flashback. Conversely, you could take all of the flashback scenes and make a damn good prequel. All that stuff, it has nothing to do. It's kind of like they had The Godfather, and then they wanted to release a prequel and a sequel, and someone said, let's just do them both. The flashbacks didn't give anything. So I call it the Godfather 2 problem, because it's kind of a problem in that you created this filler that doesn't drive the story forward. But what it does do is create a second story, completely independent of the first. So, is this a make or a break situation with flashbacks? The Godfather 2 is an amazing movie, in my opinion. I mean, the general consensus is that The Godfather 2 is an amazing movie. So I would definitely say the flashbacks made the movie. People loved it. If you could pull something like that off in a book where you got both, and they don't even need to be dependent on one another, whoa. I mean, do it if you can. I mean, if you're reading a book, you're taking that risk that the reader's going to be like, I don't care about this Vito Corleone stuff. Stop showing me stuff in Little Italy in the 1910s. Like, I don't care. Or whenever it took place, right? It's a dangerous swing to take, but if you pull it off, whoo, 2 books in one. Oh my goodness. So it's definitely an example of a successful flashback in the case where it shouldn't have been a successful flashback. It goes against the grain of storytelling, traditionally, but it's a story within a story. I'm probably going to get some comments about people disagreeing with me, and that's cool. That's cool. And my mind can be changed. I'm just saying, my mind can be changed. I'm just saying that on its surface, both stories could exist without the other, and one story could be considered filler to the other. I actually prefer the flashback stuff more than the main story. Okay, so number 5 is the single flashback. I think these work best. You know, you're showing something, you've got a main story, and you need to just show something in the past, just once. Maybe it's your prologue. Prologues are often a flashback. You start with the flashback. Or maybe it's a middle of the book scene. You know, you're building up, and now, hold on, let me show you what happened over here. And then, boom, you're back, build. And that build is going to be a lot stronger because, oh my God, you know where this is going now. Those kind of flashbacks are real good because they amp up the stakes. It's not about jumping between 2 stories and 2 plot lines. It's about showing the reader something that's important to the story, but it happened in the past. And that is the essence of what a good flashback should be. And you don't need to pepper them through your whole novel. You can, but you don't need to. If you're just dealing with showing them the one thing that's pertinent to the story as it's unfolding in the present day. So that's number 5. The power of a single flashback that doesn't take too much from the present day and adds great value and enriches the modern narrative. All right, so that about wraps it up. 5 flashback examples that can make or break a story? Let me know in the comments what your flashback experience has been. Do you have flashbacks in your work in progress? Are there flashbacks in your manuscript? How do you use them? Do you have a way that you prefer them to be used? Do you have a way that you hate when they're used? Let me know in the comments. If you like this video, please smush that like button, and as always, please subscribe. I post most Thursdays, and you can follow me on social media. I'm on a plethora of platforms. You can check them out in the description. All the links are there. I'm most active in Threads, Blue Sky, and Facebook these days. And you can check out jmchadley.com for all sorts of stuff. I've got character art. You can leave me a message from there. All good stuff. And be sure to check out The Unlife of Lisa Cooper and The Vampires of 1863. My 2 vampire adventure books, they're out there, and they are crammed full of fun and awesome. And Chewy the dog, the Neapolitan Mastiff, who is so much more than Neapolitan Mastiff, if you know what I mean. All right, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.